My name is Chase Skylar Deo, and I grew up in Orlando, Florida. From the day I was born, my grandparents adopted me. My mother was too young. She was only 17 at the time, and my biological father had no interest in being involved in a child's life. Fortunately, my grandparents had already adopted many other children. So I actually had two Korean sisters, one Korean brother, and one black brother. You wouldn't think that your grandparents adopting you and your parents being different would be a big deal until you start school, and people begin to point out the differences in appearances between you and your siblings. We would go out to eat, and people would ask which church we belonged to because these visibly different children were all part of the same family, which was hard for people to grasp. We would get off a real tropic traveler bus, if you remember those. We had a wonderful childhood. In 7th grade, I had the opportunity to join a ROC, like a middle school military program, and I immediately jumped on it. I was one of the first volunteers. My grandfather served in the military, and my great-grandfather served in the Navy. So I always had this feeling that it's what I'm supposed to do. It was definitely not a burden. It was something I was very excited about, feeling the call to defend the country I deeply love. So, as soon as I was old enough to join, I enlisted in the Air Force. However, I got injured in both of my knees during the training course. The Air Force surgeon said surgery was the best option at the time, but unfortunately, the knee surgery was not successful. Once my knees were injured, my goals and visions for life began to crumble. It was catastrophic for me. I didn't know what to do, and I started to feel very scared and anxious. My friends were worried about me because I felt like my life was falling apart. One morning, I was working late at the base. My supervisor found me passed out on the floor of my dorm. So they immediately rushed me to Langley Air Force Base Hospital, where they hooked me up to every machine possible, started running blood tests, started doing tests to figure out why I passed out on the floor of my dorm, and they couldn't find anything wrong. I was young, in the best shape of my life. There was no reason why I would pass out. So, of course, they investigated everything a doctor should. Was I doing drugs? Was I drinking? Was it something like that? But I had never touched drugs then, and I still haven't. So they couldn't understand why I would pass out. Then the nurse said, "We're going to do some more tests. We're going to give you a chest x-ray, and if we don't find anything wrong, then we'll send you home. There's no reason for you to still be here." As she started my walking out of the room, from that moment on, everything changed. I heard alarms start to go off, like something out of a movie or TV show. Alarms started going off. My vision started to blur. It didn't feel real at all. Nurses and doctors started rushing around. I was at the end of the hallway, in my room, so they almost ran into the wall. They were running so fast because alarms were going off, and I obviously knew something was really wrong. When the doctor and the nurses were working on my body, someone sat on my left side and started patting my arm, telling me everything was going to be okay. When this alarm went off, people started yelling, and you could hear the tension in their voices, but I was so clearly aware that they knew something was wrong. Then the voice on my left said, "The air is going to travel up your arm, and it's going to hurt a lot, but everything will be okay." The pain started to travel up my arm. The best way I can describe it is like a silver huge bullet. The pain was so intense that I could almost feel it progressing along every centimeter or every inch. It really felt like a train heading towards my heart. I remember my right leg starting to rise a bit as these nurses and doctors were over me, almost like a natural response or reflex to this pain progressing. But the voice on my left was so calm and reassuring as it patted my arm. As a soldier, I don't want a man patting my arm. "What are you doing?" But having someone on my left so calmly and reassuringly telling me everything would be okay while experiencing such intense pain was such a strange feeling. Feeling so calm while experiencing such intense pain. And while the nurses and doctors were yelling at each other, I could hear my left side's voice being so calm. Finally, after trying to look to my left repeatedly, I finally did. Not only was there no one on my left, but I saw the screen completely flat. At that moment, when I saw myself flat, I started to rise. I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. It was like everything started to release from my body, this feeling of ice, like this really cool, wonderful feeling. My body started to release and pour out of my chest, like a tunnel of light shooting towards my chest. I think even I experienced this feeling a million times. There's no way to describe it. But I'm moving upwards, and I can't see where I'm going, but I completely trust where I'm headed. It's truly beautiful. If this is what it feels like now, I can only imagine where I'm about to go. Before long, I find myself in a garden. It's a garden filled with flowers and plants I've never seen before, and these beautiful colors. Everything is so vivid, almost like looking at the sun. You have to squint because everything is so beautiful and vibrant. There's no sense of floating. Your body feels so light.
No gravity.
But the garden and the leaves are so real. These vibrant plants and flowers are so bright. We don't have colors like these here. I could say they're purple, red, and blue, but that wouldn't do it justice. Everything is so bright, almost vibrating. You feel so in tune and connected. Now when we pass a tree or walk along a sidewalk, you might say that's a beautiful plant or a beautiful flower. But in heaven, it feels like I'm experiencing the plants and flowers. When you dream, you might not necessarily feel anything. You're just imagining. And if you're dreaming, you're detached from this little world. It's so real because I felt things. I felt the grains of soil between my toes. I hated being barefoot, so I really remember feeling the dirt on my feet. Ahead of me, I see a gentleman in robes chasing after a little boy about 3 or 4 years old, a little boy with curly blonde hair. The boy is running a bit ahead, looking back. He's mischievous. As I watch the boy run, I just watch this beautiful interaction, almost like between a father and son. I watch this little boy so happy, enjoying his life so purely, until I get closer, and then you lean in. Oh, my goodness, it's me. I forgot I once had curly blonde hair, that I was so happy, always smiling, just a happy child growing up. No matter what was happening around me, I was always a happy child. I think by the time I was 19, I started taking life seriously. I was so concerned about a career in the military and all the things I cared about. I had completely forgotten about that happy little kid. So it was a beautiful reminder, reminding me of how I used to be. When I saw the man turn around, I immediately knew it was Jesus. I should also say Jesus wasn't quite what I imagined, but I was very sure it was him. He had short hair, green eyes, the most radiant smile. But growing up, you often see a man with long blonde hair, sometimes very skinny. But this person was just a healthy, peaceful man in robes. But you're so sure it's your left hand and your right hand. When you look in the mirror, you know it's you. I knew it was Jesus. At that moment, when Jesus turned to me, he said, "This is what your life should be, spreading light, love, and laughter." Almost like a reminder, you've been here before, you've known all this. Like you've forgotten, but you've always known the joy in life, always finding a reason to smile. I really thought my life was over. Everything I trained for, hoped for, and imagined was over. Just that conversation alone was enough for me to say, okay, I've been focusing on all the wrong things here. I'm focused on career. I'm focused on money. I'm focused on making sure I can pay for my car. But in reality, none of that matters at the end of the day. What matters is feeling fulfilled, feeling like you've given back to the world, making people smile. It was a good lesson, telling me what life should always be. You should always find joy, laughter, and happiness. We stood there for what felt like a long time. I couldn't say it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. To me, it was a period of time where I gained so much knowledge. I felt like I knew everything. But this friendly relationship made me feel like I had spent a lot of time with them before. Before I realized it, he chuckled and said, "You know, you have to go back." I didn't argue. I said, Yes, I know. It was a reminder I had been given multiple times. Maybe not as dramatic as a near-death experience or a stopped heartbeat, but I've experienced it multiple times. It's just this time it was better. You can't stay here too long. You know you have to go back. I said, okay, I understand. It was just a very interesting friendly gesture. Like when you say goodbye to a friend you've seen before, you know you'll see them again. So you just say see you later. It was very peaceful. There wasn't a part of my body saying I wanted to stay. It was like spending time with a friend. You know you have to go home, and then you go home. It was like understanding very clearly I had a lot more to do. Before I knew it, I was back in my body, at a different base outside a different city. So, the Air Force sent me to another hospital outside the base in Hampton, Virginia, where I was pronounced dead. I woke up and started to open my eyes. Of course, at that moment, you think it's a dream. You close your eyes and go back. Open your eyes again. You'd say, oh, I can't go back now. My eyes opened, and my body felt completely normal. There was no pain in my chest. Obviously, confusion ensued. I'm not in that room where I died. The people walking down the hallway weren't in military uniforms, so it was obvious I wasn't at the base anymore. Shortly, a nurse peeked in. I said hello. She looked a bit flustered. She said, I'm going to find the doctor, and then ran off. A doctor came in again saying, I don't know what to tell you, but we'll send you back to the Air Force, and they can handle you as they wish. Just like that. During that time, my left arm was all bruised. The congestion was severe due to the air entering my heart. I went back to the hospital again because the bruising on my arm was still severe, and I wanted answers. I wanted to know why I died. Why did I experience cardiac arrest? So, I went back to the hospital, and they documented what happened to my arm. They wrote a whole paragraph. The patient suffered an air embolism, which is what happens when air enters your heart. So, it seems the nurse accidentally let air through the vein inserted into a major vein in me, accidentally causing my heart to stop. But the nurses and doctors were very helpful, very friendly, very apologetic. They couldn't have been nicer. By July 8, 2008, just a few months later, I was fully retired from the military. In less than a week of my return, my life had changed so drastically. Anything I found interesting or sparked my interest, I said, I'm going to do it now. I joined a local university's breakdancing club. It didn't even go to that university. I did comedy for a while. I started photography and shot people's weddings. I learned ballroom dancing and became a ballroom dance instructor. I just checked off these things, like I had been given another chance to be here, and I was going to go out and enjoy life. I made a huge list. I had opportunities to host competitions with celebrities, ended up on TV. I was the announcer for a local baseball and hockey team in Norfolk, Virginia, for a few years. I was just very eager to do things that made me happy and spread light, laughter, and love, which is what I was told to continue to share. I attended a retreat organized by a veterans organization where they would take veterans together and you'd spend 5 days doing yoga and meditation. They'd talk to you, really focusing on your mental health, finding inner peace. I had never really meditated or done yoga. A group of big guys doing yoga. Of course, everyone was probably rolling their eyes at that time. But at the end of those 5 days, I felt it was the happiest moment of my life. I returned, and my wife immediately, within minutes of seeing me on that Friday afternoon, said, "You've changed. You look so relaxed." During that time, I was overly focused on my corporate work, becoming a serious executive. She said, "You've changed. You seem content with yourself." At that moment, I began to question again, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I really started to recall my near-death experience. A day or two later, I began to feel my body change completely and become so sensitive to the environment around me. I felt that just by meditating, doing yoga, and breathing exercises, I could clear my mind and better understand the external world and better understand how I could help others. I started to realize that I might have some talents that weren't as ordinary as I imagined. I began to truly feel the emotions of everyone around me. Intuition became stronger, and I felt so acutely whether strangers around me were suffering. At that time, I felt a burden. I need to fix everyone around me. I must heal everyone's pain and do everything I can to bring them any positive energy to help them through that pain. If they are sad and they are around me, then it's my job now. My job is to help them no longer experience that pain. I began to truly accept this and accept that this was a new reality, something I could bring to the world. I found out my grandmother was in the hospital, and I began to truly pray and do what I knew. It was a feeling in my chest or in my heart that I could extend my hands out and pray for her, hoping she would suffer less. I knew I couldn't heal everyone completely, but I just prayed for her to suffer a little less and to suffer a little less. Shortly after, I began to feel numbness in the palms of my hands. I put my hands down, looked again, and there were clear marks on the palms of both of my hands. But I immediately knew, okay, this is a little scary. I showed it to my wife. I took a picture because I said, I need to document this, maybe show it to someone I trust. I showed the picture to people, and they immediately said, you have to stop taking on other people's pain. That's not the pain you're meant to carry. I said, okay. In my human brain, I wanted to say it was an allergic reaction. It was just something happening on my body, like a rash on your forearm. But they only appeared when I was truly trying to help the people around me. So it wasn't a painful experience. It was a peaceful experience. I could feel it distinctly in the palms of my hands, like an energy passing through that part of my hands. I sat on the plane. There was absolutely no sound on the plane. I couldn't nap on the plane. I felt a presence immediately hit my chest, like, wow. I knew it was Jesus again. We just had this exchange, hey, you're on the right path, but take care of yourself. If you deplete your own battery, you'll never be someone who can help others. He said, you have to allow people to have human experiences. You can't bear everyone's pain, because some people need to experience that pain. It was profound for me, but also difficult. It reminded me that I couldn't try to heal every person I thought was suffering, because then I would suffer too. I still had to let people experience this human world. It's not my job to constantly intervene in other people's lives. When I had the opportunity to heal people, it became very clear. This is the most recent thing. Just in the past few months, I'm now trying to figure out how to use my gifts without interfering in other people's lives. Going through what I've been through and not becoming a different person, it's very difficult. Laughter, smiles, it's an easy thing. It's free, like breathing. We can breathe for free. We can pray for free. We can meditate for free. We can laugh for free. We can find joy in everything.